Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to take a tour of the old garden in the first week of September. Let's get going. So as I said, today we're going to be taking a little walk here through the old garden, see some of the changes, what's coming out, and what the future holds. Before we get going though, I just want to point out that we finally got a decent rain. It's been close to 6 weeks, I think. It might be 5. It was like right there at the beginning of August, but it's been weeks and weeks where triple-digit temperatures and no rain, everything dried out. And keeping the gardens alive, to be truthfully, was my main job. It was really difficult to do. I'm just thankful that part is over. You know, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and watering your gardens and then fertilizing and getting all that done before the heat of the day hits. You know, it can be a challenge when you have as much garden space as we do. Hopefully I don't sound like I'm complaining too much because I'm really thankful for what we have. But anybody out there who knows, who's been going through this, you know, it's a lot of work to keep this stuff alive. We're thankful it's still putting off. With that out of the way, let's go take a look at what we're talking about. Before we step inside, I just want to point out, you know, it's going on the end of the first week of September here, and we are still inundated with quite a few pollinators here on the outside of the old garden. And it's really paying off for us, to be honest. We haven't had any major infestations outside of the butternut squash. We also had a late infestation on our yellow squashes, but we've got all that remedied. But overall, I am really satisfied with the way that these pollinators have worked in conjunction with the rest of our approach to get rid of a lot of the pests that decimate your gardens here in 7B. So before we step inside real fast, I just want to point out there's going to be a lot of open space. Creating that space was quite a bit of work as well, especially with the heat and that kind of stuff. One of the reasons why that we have gone ahead and cleared this off is because we are rapidly approaching the time for our fall crops. We'll get into that a little bit more when we step inside. But if you haven't, and you have areas of your garden that are struggling and maybe requiring more of your time than it's worth, maybe consider pulling some of that stuff out and putting in some of your fall gardens that may not take as much of your time, and you'll actually get more vegetables in the long term if you start now. So you can see here, speaking of open spaces, this whole area right here in our new Vejiga bed, it is open, and we have a solid plan for this. Last year, or I'm sorry, in the spring, we grew mustard greens here, and they did really well. Also, we're still getting quite a bit of like direct hot sun. It's going to be in the 90s probably for the next couple weeks. Here in 7B, there's a chance all the way up until the 1st of October that we might get a run on 3-digit temperatures. So it's a good idea to kind of plan out as you're doing this to make sure they have a little bit of shade before you pull out all of your plants. And of course, that's what we're going to use. You know, these pepper plants right here, they'll protect those plants from a lot of the sun because, you know, this way over here, that's south. So the pepper plants will kind of shield these off a little bit. I'm probably not going to put pepper plants in this area, to be honest with you. Keep an eye out here on the channel. If you haven't subscribed, you can do so. Here at the end of the month, I'm going to go over kind of what Leslie and I have learned over the summer with these beds. I find it useful, and maybe you folks will too. So our basil is still kicking. You know, we have a few buds on it here and there, but we've been able to harvest off of this plant all summer long. For those of you who watch the channel, you know that there were 4 basil plants in here until recently. We kept the buds off of this one just so we have fresh basil to eat until the first frost hits. The other 3 plants we let go to seed, and we got a remarkable amount of seeds off of just those 3 plants. It's a great way to handle this stuff if you don't want to end up buying basil seeds. I do want to do an update real fast. You know, the truth is, I don't think I'm growing these yellow pear tomatoes anymore. they have just not stood up very well to the heat here in Arkansas. But I will say, now that everything is kind of backed off a little bit, I'm really hoping that we get a few more of them. All the other tomatoes have done fantastic this time of year, but just last week I had another one that for whatever reason it just died off. And most of our cherry tomatoes last until the first frost. So next year we'll be doing just orange tomatoes and sweet millions. But for the rest of this season, we are going to enjoy the yellow pear tomatoes that it's putting off. And over here on the back side of it, we've gone over this once before, but just a reminder, we covered all of this stuff in leaves after we fertilized it, just to make sure the sun doesn't beat it down and kill all the microbes in the soil. You know, if that ambient temperature in the soil gets too hot, it'll just kill off all of the life that you've been working for. Funny thing, you can see all of these zinnias are coming in here. I'm gonna let them go for a little bit. I might even try to pot them. I don't think there's enough time left in the season to get flowers off of them, but I have a hard time, you know, especially free plants, just letting them go. So it'll be something fun for my time. Hey, what's up, Mr. Wasp? So the okra has started putting off really well. Let's see, yep. Almost every time that we get okra, we have ants. They don't bother the stuff, and they don't bother our okra plants, and you know, they don't bother us a whole lot, so we usually let them go. But for those of you that remember, you know, it took the okra a little while to take off, but once it did, man, it has done well. Let's see here, what were we looking at earlier? Oh, there she is. If you can see our friendly garden spider there. She's got a little nest in there with some eggs. We're gonna let that go, and I'll probably leave most of this okra in there through the winter time, and hopefully we can have more garden spiders in here next year. I love having garden spiders. They really help out a lot. Leslie tolerates them. I think she's not as big a fan as I am, but as you can see, we are doing really well on okra. Leslie's able to pickle it. We're not going to get near the 50 jars that we had of the cucumbers, but we're going to have enough to give out to friends and family. And here is the big thing. I went through and all of the purple hull peas were finished. And the green beans, we ended up getting 15 jars of green beans and I don't know, 5 or 6 really good dinners that were just predominantly green beans out of this one bed. The green beans we could have left on and eaten a little bit more out of them, but because we're getting so close to planting our fall potatoes, I did not want to take a chance on not being able to prep the bed depending on how the weather goes here. The weather in 7B, especially heading into the fall, can be incredibly unpredictable. So it's really difficult if you don't have your beds prepped early to be able to get everything in right when you want to. And with this being the first year that we're actually growing fall potatoes specifically, I just didn't want anything to get in the way, so I preemptively pulled them after we met the goal that we had for that round of green beans. Next year, we will do the exact same thing more than likely in this bed. I really like the transition from potatoes to green bean to potatoes. So over the next week and a half, we'll go through, we'll break all of this up. I've already added the fertilizer into it. I wanted to let the rain that we got this morning kind of soak in and carry that granule fertilizer through the, you know, like soak into the bed itself. And then I'll go through and I'll put about 3 or 4 inches of compost on top of this bed, and then we'll plant the potatoes. So kind of keep a lookout for that. It'll be, let's see, tomorrow's Saturday. I believe it's 2 weeks from tomorrow that our potatoes will go in. I'll have to look at my calendar to make sure that's accurate, but I believe that's right. And so over here is something that's gone really well. These are our late summer cucumbers. I didn't even know you could do this. I had an old timer recommend it to me. And so far it has done really well. We are starting to get, you can see in there, we're starting to get blooms and the first cucumbers attached to them. So that's going to be really good. The only problem is whenever we hit that, we just had that weird like 3 weeks or so with no rain. And you know, it hadn't rained before that, but the temperatures were pretty okay at night, right? It would be hot in the daytime, but it would cool off at night. These last few weeks, man, I mean, you know, we were lucky if it would get in the mid 70s at nighttime. Most of the time it was in the 80s. It was just miserable, but we made it through there, and now we're on the good side. Again, you can see all those, they self-seeded themselves. That's kind of fun. The marigolds, we're enjoying them. They're going through another round of budding now that we've kind of really watered hardcore the last few days, only because we were ready for this rain. We're also trying to get ready for the fall garden, so I didn't want anything to die out, and I wanted to make sure that all of the microorganisms that we've tried so hard to keep alive stayed in. I'm not sure if we're going to get anything off of these, but I sure am glad we put them in the ground. These are just pole beans. We didn't plant them real thick just because we wanted to make sure that we didn't overcrowd them. They're starting to get flowers on them. We're going to see how that works out. You know, if it does, awesome. If not, well, whatever. It was worth a shot, right? So we'll know for next year. If this doesn't work, my idea is going to be to sort of rotate all of these trellises that we have between, just do cucumbers, wait 4 weeks, plant another round of cucumbers, wait 4 weeks, plant another round of cucumbers, and then just sort of work our way through the summer next year like that, with the idea that we want to just have cucumbers all the way through the year. I just don't like them, you know, once they've been in the ground for about 3 or 4 months, the cucumbers themselves start, you know, they come out weird shaped and they don't taste near as good. Skins get a little thick, so I pulled them this year and tried this method. I think next year I'm going to do the stagger, since I have the room, right? I'm going to stagger them out a little bit over 3 or 4 different areas. Well, that about does it for today's tour through the old garden. Next Friday, we'll take a look at the top garden. You'll see what I mean. There's a lot going on out here this time of year. Another thing I just wanted to point out real fast is going into next week, the weather is going to change drastically. The evenings are going to be, our lows are going to be in the low 50s, which is fantastic. There are several days that won't even be above 80 degrees. If you live here anywhere close to Arkansas in Zone 7B, you know what I mean by the fact that we rarely get a fall. It feels like most years it goes from 100 all the way down to 50 for a high. You know, there's really no in between here. So it'll be really nice, really pleasant if we can get somewhat of a fall going on. Not only that, but it'll really encourage the greens and things that we're going to be putting in this weekend to grow, and hopefully we can self-seed some of the radishes and that sort of stuff soon with the evening temperatures being so low. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes. Weather is so unpredictable. But I think I've rambled on long enough today. As always, I appreciate all you folks for hanging out with me today. Till next time, I hope everyone takes care of themselves. Peace.